Welcome to today's webinar. We're excited to have this webinar today because we're going to talk about a topic that we've never brought up before because frankly, I don't think anybody's doing what we're talking about. And so we'll be working with Attorney Michael Kahn in a few moments. It's good to have you with us. You all know Danielle and I'm Lee Sheldon. Good to have you here. First, I've heard from Brian France, president of the American Academy of Periodontology, and he wants to know this. The Academy recognizes that this is a complex environment. We're trying to figure out all the things we're going to need, personal protective equipment, the different items that we may be required to get. And they're gathering the facts. As a matter of fact, they're not on tonight because there's a full board meeting happening right now. And so he's working with the Board of Trustees. But Brian wants to assure you that that the information that he gives you is accurate information. And so there's not going to be any speculation. Tonight, I'm going to give you a little bit of speculation. But the material that, that Brian's going to give you are the facts. Brian encourages you all to get involved. You know, get involved with organized dentistry. Have a seat at the table in order to be able to have a voice into how we are going to practice, how we're going to practice in the future. We've got this. We've got this entire profession under control. The AAP is working very hard. We're very fortunate to have the group of officers that we have right now, led by Brian France. He will be in touch with you. He certainly is willing to take any recommendations that you might have. So with that, let's talk a little bit before we talk with Michael, and Michael's going to give us a very unique tool, which I think you're all going to be excited about. Danielle, let's talk about a little bit about where we are and what we're doing. So I'll lead. We are seeing emergencies, and frankly, we're treating emergencies as an emergency clinic. And we had somebody come in today, and we said it's going to be $600, and she said I can only afford $350, and we said fine, we'll take the $350. We've got to serve the community, and that's what we're doing right now. The fact that our practice is active, I think, does make a difference. And if you have that opportunity of hiring an assistant, we have 2 assistants that we're hiring on for 10 hours, 15 hours, maybe 20 hours a week, depending on how busy we are. Then you have the opportunity of seeing patients, applying your skills. And there's something about a practice in motion. So if you can do it, I'd encourage it. Danielle, what's going on as far as you're working with staff and how you're interacting with staff and maybe some of the successes that you're having?
Sure, yes. Now, initially when we did the layoff or the furlough that we did, it was the intent to get all the staff laid off so we could just wait for either the loans to come in or this to pass or whatever. So we do have those 2 employees on, and I wish we had the answers to let you know how that works with unemployment, because they are still on the unemployment and no one's received a check yet from unemployment. But the idea that it's supposed to go by is if you have a staff member on the unemployment, they will get partial pay, not full pay. So we don't really know where that goes now. The important part is we have the staff that's available, that is willing, and there's no really set schedule. They're just coming in as needed for emergencies. They're also doing things like running our lines and keep the maintenance going so that it doesn't become stagnant in the office, which is really helpful as well. As we come across the ideas or the orders for things that we need to get back on board, whether it's the masks or the garments or whatever we need in order to get back, to open up our doors again, that's also, we're going to use them to help us with ordering, making sure where things are stocked. But I am keeping communication daily with staff, and whether it's chiming into our group chat to make them, let them know, you know, we're checking on them to see how you're doing. If you guys have any ideas, I got on board a few staff today, 3 staff today, to start talking about what their ideas are for some of the new PPE that we're going to be bringing on. Our hygienist, one of the hygienists who's excellent at thinking through some of those things, our lead surgical. So I'm trying to do all I can to keep them involved, at least keep them thinking so that they don't stay out of touch with us for too long. And I think it's really important to keep them involved in this. And they've all been really good with that. I don't think I have anybody that's been quiet along the way. But you know, my hope is we have that May 8th date that was supposedly we're able to open up our doors. It's not that far away anymore. And I'm really looking to see what our plans are going to be, our definite plans for can we come in 2 weeks early, who are we going to call, what are we going to do, and get those few staff on first, then a few more, and a few more, and then May 8th, everybody comes in and we're able to get things done. So right now it's just planning, what are we going to do now?
Yep. From our standpoint, it's how do we prepare? And so we've been looking at personal protective equipment. We have some face shields, and we haven't been able to get N95 masks. We've been able to get some KN95 masks. And for those of you who are on our list, I send updates. So there are things that can be done right now. I was very much interested in extraoral suction in a tube, with a filtration device with a HEPA filter to be able to preferentially suction out the aerosols through that large tube. And the main manufacturer in that group is IQ Air, the letters IQ and Air, and they have been doing this for 15 years. I looked at another system, and they are not back ordered, and so we were able to order another system. I can't vouch for it, and there's going to be all sorts of disclaimers tonight. So here's the disclaimer. Usually when I make recommendations to you, you can take them to the bank. Today, I'm making a recommendation. I'm letting you know what I did. Do all the research yourself and see whether, in fact, it's something that you'd like to do. But a company that does have air evacuation and a medical unit that they're adapting for dentistry. So they've done 2 dental units, that's it. Is a company called Sentry, Sentry, Sentry Air, and Sentry Air is in Texas. And do your research, but that's who we ordered from. And as I said, 2-week manufacturer, they custom make them, and 1-week delivery. So that's what we've been promised, and that's what I can tell you about that. We also have UV, and we have the Halo unit. The Halo units are back ordered, and so this goes into the air handler in your HVAC, and they're 11 weeks back ordered. So we're taking the UVCs out of our house tomorrow, and we're installing them in the office so that we have the air system cleaned off. So those are some of the things we're doing. We're not arguing, discussing about disposables or versus doing a lot more washes. And Danielle and I are working that out. Probably by next Thursday's webinar, we'll have come to a conclusion. We'll be able to tell you about that. Anything else that done our constant contact communication? So we're contacting our patients every week. And anything else any other hints that you can give before we get to the meat of the subject?
I have a lot of members that have been requesting guidance through our members only site, which I'm loving that because, as we're busy and we're working through our day with our schedule and our patients and we're getting things done and we don't really have time to do a whole lot of that training or fine tuning. And I like that now they're finding that time. So it's, where do I find the modules on the check sheets and the meetings and all these structures, because they know that date's coming around the corner and they're trying to sharpen all that. They're sending those links to their staff. Staff is watching those and doing some training while we're waiting for the doors to open. So that's good.
Great time for training. A great time for training. Yeah.
Yes.
So that's good. So let's introduce the star of the show. Michael Kahn. Michael and I have been good friends for many, 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 many years. But I'm not bringing on Michael because he's a friend of mine. Michael is a First Amendment attorney. And frankly, there are some of us every once in a while who will find a patient who has nothing good to say about us. That ever happened to you? So yeah, we're all looking for good Google reviews, good Yelp reviews, positive feedback on social media. But there is a time when there might be that patient who is inclined to do something else. And because Michael is a First Amendment attorney and has been appointed by federal judges all over Florida to do First Amendment law, and because he's hired by communities all over Florida to help them, I thought he would be the perfect person to bring on. And not just to bring on to talk about First Amendment law, but talk about how we can avoid getting those bad Google reviews. And he's come up with a tool that we've never seen before. So, Michael, let's put up, should I put up the tool? Do
Sure, go ahead, Lee.
you want to say hi
I
while I'm
would,
doing this?
I would like to say hi. Just a brief background. I went to school at Duke University, so for any of you Carolina fans out there, I'm very sorry. Okay. Second of all, I practice business law as well. First Amendment, it's kind of like I feel privileged to practice First Amendment law. I've been hired by about 35 Florida counties and cities over the years to do First Amendment ordinances or defend them. And I also have taught the First Amendment law for about 15 years for 2 separate schools, but I also have a robust business practice and represent a number of physicians, dentists, oral surgeons, prosthodontists, etc. So it's a really effective combination for what we're going to talk about tonight.
Very good. So let's bring up the document and let's talk first about the disclaimer. And you know, everybody's going to be able to download this document. I will, well, I can tell you right now, if you, and I'll put up a graphic. You can download the document by going to directorofdentistry.com/learn, Learn, and you'll have access to the document. You won't have to enter any other information, any personal information. You don't have to. You'll have the opportunity if you want to get on our list, because there are a number of people who want to get on our list to be notified of some of the things we're doing. But you can download this independently and don't have to go on any list in order to be able to do that. So let's talk about the disclaimer first, Michael, because it's important.
Thank you. It is important as well. This is a generic sort of agreement that we're sharing with everybody. It's not ready to be signed and utilized. It cannot be used, as I say in the disclaimer, as is, because I've tried to keep it very short, and even with additions that I would make, it still will be very short, and I'm doing that purposely. But there would be things that I would add to each agreement that depend entirely upon the type of practice that the individual or the entity is. So it can't be used. It cannot be used as it is. It would have to be added onto, and that's a very important point to make.
So you take it to an attorney to personalize it, if you will.
Exactly, to individualize it. Has to be individually bringing in aspects of each practice for reasons that we'll get to in a little while. So you can't just download it and use it. You need to go to counsel, and basically your counsel can call me for any pointers that he or she wants, but that's what you have to do with this. But you were right about one thing earlier. It is cutting edge, Lee. There's nobody that I know that's doing this. I've done it for certain of my clients now, but it has aspects to it that involve both First Amendment law as well as business law.
Very good. So is there something that we should be, well, let's talk about the document itself first, and then maybe you and Danielle can talk about how we'll implement the document in our office.
Okay. Well, first of all, I want to just set the stage with a basic premise. It's not controversial, but it's somewhat, I won't say unusual, surprising, I guess would be the best way to put it. And I have anecdotes that are kind of supportive of it. But this document is evidence of a basic premise in First Amendment law, and that is you can contract away your First Amendment rights. For example, when I taught for Florida Tech for about 7 years, and they used to have an event that I was a part of on several different occasions, and it was called Free Speech or Free Cookies. And what they would do is they would hand out chocolate chip cookies, a particular weakness of mine, to people, but they had to, for an hour, not say anything. So what the point that made is the point that is the foundation of this agreement, Lee and Danielle, and that is that you can contract away your First Amendment rights, including the right to negatively post. If you see in paragraph 3 here, it says the patient agrees not to post negative comments about the dental practice on any digital platform, video, audio, or written, social media, YouTube reviews, email, or traditional news outlets. So basically, that is a dramatic agreement to restrict your First Amendment rights. Now, if you go down a little bit, if you scroll up, I guess would be the way, to paragraph 5. This is a very also dramatic surrender of rights. And it's really the attack point for the agreement, because in it, the patient agrees that if he or she should violate this provision, then in any litigation, the patient shall be liable for all of the practice's attorney's fees, no matter whether the practice prevails or not in the litigation. And that is a disincentive right within this contract, because that's what it is. It's a contract. So those are some things that I really want to emphasize at the outset of this presentation.
So
Now,
as we look at now, paragraph 1 is that's kind of the soft one. That's saying that we're a good practice, that we're okay, that you've chosen the right place.
that's true. And what it really is, it's setting up the idea, because in every contract, there has to be what's known as consideration. Consideration is what the patient is getting for such dramatic restriction of their First Amendment rights with a severe penalty. They're getting the use of your practice. They're getting, as it says, backed by years of satisfied patients. And this is a part, the consideration aspect, that would have to be individualized. And I would want to individualize it. And I will be individualizing it for your practice even further, with a couple of paragraphs that talk about that, because that's important. The consideration aspects of the agreement are very important, because you have to have consideration for a contract, let alone a contract that gives up your First Amendment rights. But you're right, that's the soft paragraph.
Okay. Everything else is fairly hard, isn't it?
Some is
Well,
very,
number 2 kind of moves into it, because though we realize that you have choices, I guess the patient has choices too, as to who he or she is going to see.
and I think that's right, because in one of the businesses that I've put this contract in place for, they had, and actually, the interesting part is there are different aspects to how this contract is used. Some of the people that I've done this for, use it with employees or independent contractors, use it as part of restrictive covenants. We're choosing to use it here, Lee and Danielle, as a patient-oriented agreement, but there are other ways to use it. And so, for example, for one business that I did it for, the prospective employees came into the individual, the owner, and she handed them this document, or not this document, but a document with the same sort of premise. And they said, well, you can't do that. That's our First Amendment rights. And she said, she's very sweet. She said, look, there are a lot of other businesses that do our business. And yes, we can. We have the right to employ anybody.
Sorry.
Now, everybody's a critic, Danielle. I mean, you know. So I know it's a dog eat dog world, but I'm not really, going there. But the point is that so the idea is that you've got to have consideration for what you're giving up. But the other point that we were talking about in paragraph 2 is everybody has choices. Your choice in a nice way to a patient coming in, and if they remonstrate over the surrender of their rights, or paragraph 5, you're saying we have had bad experiences, and you can be as candid as you want to with people that are candidly not telling the truth in social media, and we're going to choose to limit our patients to those who signed this agreement. And
You also have number 6 there, which gives them a way to communicate their concerns. So it's not like you're telling them they can't say anything at all.
No, it's very intelligent point. 6 and 7, okay? Because really what you're saying is, look, if, number one, here's your avenue within the practice, but also you have other avenues that are, ensconced in society, such as peer review, such as, litigation, such as mediation, arbitration, alternate dispute. So you have other ways to go. And there's an inherent point that I may bring out in the additional paragraphs that I would choose to add. And that is this. In this age of social media, it has an inordinate strength to it, meaning that the ordinary way, even if you went to Better Business Bureau or you went to the newspaper or etc., you would still have relatively limited access to the world. If you go to social media, okay, it's you can go viral with it. You can ruin somebody's life with it instead of putting the framework of a complaint about dental practice into its proper context. That's, Danielle, it's a great point. What 6 and 7 does. Exactly so.
So are there, you've used this in other businesses before, which I didn't even realize.
Yes.
And you gave me an example of how somebody might respond. But in real life, would most people sign this, or are there going to be a lot of questions, or is it one of those things where they read the form, they sign it along with the 10 or 11 other forms we have them sign, or, what do we have to do in order to be able to make the patient say that he or she was informed as to what he or she was signing?
Well, that's an excellent question. One of the businesses that I used this with was a daycare center. Now, in the daycare center, you got to understand it just is a different approach. It's a different prism with which to view this agreement. They used it as part of a restrictive covenant for employees, which they had 52. They're a very large daycare center employees. And they were very worried about your point. What were employees going to say? And most of them understood the issue, and all of them signed with, I think, the exception of one, who gave them a problem. And the owner said, look, this is the way we have to do it. And, we will be glad, there's other daycare centers there. Now, I'm using that analogy because it's the same. What you're going to be telling your patient, and you're going to be outlining the problem. In 2020, they would have to be very, very much under the proverbial rock not to know the inordinate power of social media and how it's ruined people. I mean, it's caused everything, including suicides in young people and some not so young people when they're vilified. So it's an issue that's there. And there's, as Danielle said, you're not restricting the traditional areas and ways to complain. But so that is the way it's going to be set up. And if there's a remonstration, if there is a reluctance by a prospective patient, I'm telling you, Lee, that's going to be a tap on the shoulder anyway as to whether you would, irrespective of this agreement, want to deal with a person that didn't understand what you were saying and wouldn't accede to it. So I say it serves several different purposes. A warning shot, you better watch out for this patient, okay, just like, it can be used in other businesses. And also, the idea, if they sign, then that definitely protects you. It makes it, nobody wants to litigate anything. But what it does is a defamation suit. If you dealt with social media head on, you've been defamed. You talk about an expensive, time-consuming lawsuit of a he said, she said, but a contract lawsuit with this agreement as a backdrop, it's in the world of litigation, very straightforward and simple. Because another interesting paragraph is that paragraph 4, because paragraph 4 says we're not going to get into an argument about what is or isn't a negative comment, because in this contract you agree that I have the discretion to determine that as a practice. And so this is a very straightforward way to address the issue, and it provides a disincentive to a potential patient to undertake something on the other end of the treatment.
Okay.
I did have a question on here is if the document has ever been challenged.
Well, in the ways that I've done it previously, no. But it is so cutting edge, it's too early to say that. And I
Right.
will say this, a lot of my First Amendment clients, cities, and this I'm very proud of, and there's an analogy here. Cities and counties will ask me, have any of my ordinances dealing with First Amendment work ever been challenged or overturned? And the answer that I give them is the way I do my ordinance work, the way I do this work, it's thoughtful to the point where I prevent challenges. And so the answer is none of my ordinances have ever been overturned, and none of my work has been challenged. The backdrop of this is the confluence of several different aspects of law. One is First Amendment. Two is business law. And three is the privilege that I've had to practice to basically have clients like Dr. Sheldon, because I have a number of different dentists of different specialties as my clients. It's a great question.
Okay. Another question comes up. I think we may want to go into it in a little bit more detail, because I think there's some concern. When we go back, there's some concern that we're not going to have exactly the same practices that we had when we stopped.
Right.
And so people are going to be more hungry, and I'm talking about dentists are going to be more hungry to have patients and have patients in their offices. So, and I guess it's a question for Danielle. It's a question for Michael. It's probably a question for me too. How do you handle a new patient who elects not to sign the contract?
That's
Well,
a choice. Oh, go ahead, Danielle.
Before all the COVID stuff and being shut down, I 100% agree with Michael that we would say this is just how we run the practice, and maybe we have to decide if we're still going to do that. I mean, as long as you have somebody that has great tone and personality that's presenting this, I don't think it's going to come across too harsh. Now, with every consent and such that we present in a financial, we don't go over it verbatim. We don't go over it step by step because, one, we have way too much stuff to sign. So we kind of get a brief on all the paper. And I think if we highlight on here the points of concern, just to say, as I do with any consent, this is a paper for this. And what it's saying you basically is this. If you have a problem with our office, give me a call. My name is Danielle. I'm the practice manager. Here's my number. We are here to make you happy. We are here to make sure that you achieve all your dental goals. And we are really good at that. So if you have any problems or concerns, don't go to Google, go to me, give me a call, and I can help you with that. So it's kind of giving a brief instead of sitting down and making them initial all these points, which I may have a problem if I had to sit there and go through the whole thing, but that it's not really for every patient to have to read the thing entirely. They're taking it home with them. They have it. So I think it's on how you present it, not really what's in it.
That's really right. And I would think that, it's every good business person's approach to this. So I think a short way to look at it, and Lee, you and I have talked about this, it's you can be the best lawyer in the world, you can be the best dentist in the world, you can be the best practice administrator in the world. But if you're not a good business person in the position that we're in, it doesn't matter. So that's why that question is really well put. And here's the way I look at it in bottom line substance is that when we come back from COVID, when you all come back from COVID, maybe the volume of your practice just resumes. Okay, maybe it just resumes and you're swamped when you open up your doors. Then you'll take one approach. You'll go to what Danielle would say you would have perhaps before COVID. If you say, hey, our volume's up, we can do what we need to do in this regard. But if it's not, then you have to make a business person's decision to maybe not insist on this. But I will and I think we'll stop there because that's the best way to look at it. Every practice is going to be different. And let's hope that once COVID, is in the rearview mirror, at least for now, okay, that basically everybody's practice resumes with the same volume it had. Because if that is true and everybody and you're doing business well, then I would say you just emphasize the fact that there's other choices. That would be when business is is flush, because that also makes you look good. If you come across, like Danielle said, not haughty, but just to explain it, and they'll make it, it really makes you look as if, hey, they're explaining the problem, and they're saying that I can choose someone else. And I think it's all about tone. So I agree with you, Danielle.
Right. And there's also another question on there that's kind of the same. So the patient may choose not to sign the contract and go to social media and complain about the practice. Now, we've had some people complain about some pretty silly things. I mean, I think if you have somebody who would do that, they're going to do that without this contract. I mean, we have patients that will complain about the way we hand them an ink pen. I mean, it's just, they want to complain about it. I would say the answer to that is the same as before. It's all on how you present it. I think you can present it very negatively, and where you feel like you don't have a say, and maybe assume you're going to get bad treatment, and now I can't say something because I'm signing this. Or if you're giving them, I know in our practice, from the moment they walk in the door, they're getting that high standard of care. You know, everybody's really friendly. Everybody is going out of their way to say hello. And by the time I think we put this in front of them, they've already got a feeling of, we're not one of those practices. I mean, they all have that overcoat on when they come into the practice because they're not sure how you're going to treat them or what you're going to say. So I think timing is good with this, as well as how you're presenting it.
There's a whole sequence of events in treating a patient. Those of you who've gone to our lectures know about that. But there is an entire sequence, and the sequence builds in terms of tone, because you have a patient who's starting with you who's scared to death, and that's how many patients? 100%. And then you gradually build them up and build them up and build them up and build them up through the sequence that we teach and others teach. And by the time they're leaving, they're saying, "Wow, what a great practice." It's at that point that they're more willing to sign. If they're in a negative mood, you know, anything you throw at them will be negative. And so there's an awful lot of concentration in all of our practices to build tone level as we go through, so the patient says, "All right, I understand. You know, there are some bad people around there, and they could hurt you, and I don't want them to hurt you. So I understand why we have to sign it." Now, we haven't implemented it yet, so I can't speak from personal experience, nor can Danielle, at least in the dental practice.
I think that also it depends another way. Depends on everybody's individual experience with social media. Maybe you have a practice that's never been burned by social media, but I can guarantee you that if you have a practice that has, you felt it. Okay.
Darn right.
And that's that. And so again, it gets back to that individual experience of your practice of doing it. But I think I've seen, because I have handled doctors and some dentists and other professionals, as well as other walks of life, who have felt the devastation of social media, and it's disproportionate to the act. And it's going to be treated with agreements like this. This is just cutting edge.
There are a few questions here about anonymous people. You know, you can always leave an anonymous review, and the answer is we can't do anything about it. Although I did do something about that on Facebook. We did have somebody who had never been to our practice and who wrote a review, and that person had a number of different fake Facebook pages. And we went to Facebook, and we were able to get all of those reviews taken off. I've never had that experience with Google, though. Any comment that you have on that, Michael, as far as, you know, anybody can go on and honestly do whatever he or she wants?
And that's the vulnerability and the power of social media. You're absolutely right, Lee. You know, you can't protect yourself from it. Anonymity is the soul of what free speech is about. You know, basically, so you really can't protect yourself. And the unbelievable aspect of it is, that's one thing if you tell 5 people, 10 people, but how about telling 1 million people? How about telling 2? Because if something goes viral and whatever, and just by the tenor of the questions that we've gotten so far, you can see the fear of social media. You can just see it and feel it. So I get it. I get it.
So then the question is, despite signing the form, if the patient still leaves a negative review on any platform, what's the next step? Hire an attorney?
Yes, and you will what I would do is you would bring a lawsuit.
Well, I'm gonna challenge you that, Michael. I think the first thing we do is to call the patient. And I'll tell you what, we had a negative review. I called the patient. He said, "What? I didn't write that."
That's
He
a
found
good
out his sister wrote that.
Yeah,
Because he
right.
was complaining about us to his sister.
Right. Well,
So
that's
call
it.
the patient first before you hire an attorney.
Well,
It's
you know
cheaper
what?
that way.
That's I'll tell you what, and that shows a leaky sieve in the sense that again, there's ways to try to circumvent that, but there's an interesting point about that. Okay, well then guess what? You would have a lawsuit against the sister. Okay, but because the cause of action would be what's known as tortious interference with a contractual relationship. In other words, she shouldn't be getting in the way of the contractual relationship between her brother and you. And but the reason why I'm saying this is meant to be, and you, if anybody, you know this about me, Lee, just because we're personal friends, and you know the way, obviously I have attorney-client privilege, so I've never literally never named another client, when we've been socializing. But you know how strongly I'm against litigation. And so what my point is that this agreement is meant to be a disincentive to the patient, to litigate. But I've made it so simple to move forward in litigation that the proof of a contract case like this is very, very straightforward. It's here's the paper. Did you sign it? Did you post it? And that's about it. Okay, so it limits the expense or time that you would have to do to prosecute that next step.
Now we've got a question here, which is a good question. We're gonna have to go back to. Let me see if I can get access to it. Let's go back to the agreement because it's a question on paragraph 4.
Okay.
So the question on paragraph 4 is, and it says the patient agrees that it is in the sole discretion of dental practice to determine whether a comment on any social media platform or traditional news outlet is negative. And the question is, would paragraph 4 discourage a patient from leaving any review, even a positive one?
No, but that's again number.
It could.
Here tonight. It's a great question.
Depends on who the patient is.
Well, look, if a patient, let's say you do the best job, as I've seen over and over and over and over in y'all's practice, Lee, that you made people happy. Well, come on, that's an obvious point. I'm going to say, okay, so that's one. What this is meant to do is to keep a patient from quibbling when he or she posts something. And you know darn well it's negative, okay? But the defense is, no, I didn't mean that as a negative. I'm just explaining, my point of view. It's one of the 3 powerful paragraphs in this document to basically make it easier to prosecute, okay? But what I'm really saying is when a patient signs this, that he or she will know that, hey, look, I can do X and Y and Z, but I'm not going to go on social media.
It's essentially saying here's guidelines for good behavior. Because we've got another question: am I concerned the patient that declines signing the form and might go somewhere else and put a negative review about being asked to sign the release form before any treatment? So he goes to somebody else and then says something bad about me. Am I concerned about that? No, I'm really not. I'm not. I mean, should I be? If I have a dozen people do it, yes. I've got to tell you that, our Google reviewers are 4.9. Okay, they're not 5.0, they're 4.9. We have, what is it, Daniel? Probably 250, 260 reviews, something like that.
Yes.
So somebody's left a negative review, and I have my people in line, so not people in line, but people who are ready, that can put in some positive reviews to counteract those negative reviews. So we all have friends, we all have staff, we all have different people. You don't use them to begin your Google review. And frankly, it's really important you get a lot of good Google reviews. That's what determines where you're going to be listed. It's one of the search engine optimization categories to get you high on the organic search. So yes, you're encouraging reviews. Yes, you want reviews. And it's really important that we do all of the things to get reviews, and we've talked about that before in our lectures and in our programs and things like that.
There's
I think this is, we've had a couple, and I've gone to you, Michael, crying, some bad reviews that were totally unjustified, and it's to discourage that.
Yeah, I really think that again, that is an excellent question, and it shows the power of social media, that you really can't stop anybody. They certainly could complain and about that, and in one of the businesses, they had a complaint from an ex-employee on social media. But the bottom line is that most of the people in that particular business, all the employees just signed, and that's it. And they understood exactly what the problem was, and they were grateful to be working at this very fine establishment. That's the kind of patience, I think, which is what Danielle is saying. When they walk in the door and you present yourself, they came in, I'm sure they're going to come in highly recommended. That's one of the reasons they're there. And basically, they're going to have such a good feeling. They're going to understand your issue. That's what you're aiming for in the presentation of this. A patient, a prospective patient that understands, hey, I can always complain. I can always sue these people. We're not trying to take away my litigation, but they're trying to protect against a real problem in today's society. And it is a real problem.
Yeah. This I can answer, but you're the attorney, Michael. It says a colleague of mine told me that asking a patient for a review is illegal. Is that true?
Asking a patient
for a review is illegal.
Not necessarily.
I think if you ask him, if you pay him to give you a review, that's illegal.
Right.
That violates Google guidelines.
Right. But not just asking him. Absolutely not. I'm assuming that question is meant also to say that not putting it into a contract, we're going to take you and you can't negatively comment, but you must comment positively or something. I'm kind of teasing, but the bottom line is, no, it's not illegal. I wouldn't put it in a written contract. I'll say it that much, but it's not illegal to ask a patient for a review.
Yeah, that's it. And I think that's pretty much it. So any final thoughts, any final comments, folks? I mean, people have asked me, how to get it. So that's why I put the title, directorofdentistry.com/learn, and it'll take you right to a bar where you can just download this document.
And so I guess my last points are, again, it's very cutting edge, but it won't be, meaning that, I'm kind of proud of what I've done here in other businesses. It's recognizing a problem that's rampant. It's a very hurtful problem. It's pervasive in society, in personal as well as business, interactions. And you're going to see more and more contracts like this. And there will be challenges to them potentially, but if they're going to be a challenge, I like the way this contract is written in its simplicity to fend it off. So I hope that it's been helpful, and I know these questions have been excellent. So thank you.
Good, Michael. Thank you. Thanks all of you joining us. Danielle, any final thoughts? You're going to have problems implementing this?
I don't think so. Like I said, I think it's, really in all how you do it. And if anybody has any questions on it or needs some help just kind of drilling through it, just let me know.
All right, that's good. And it's important. You do have to drill through this as with anything. You just do it. You just can't give it to your staff. There is a training, and it's training you can do within your office in order to be able to take care of that. We're gonna have another we're doing these webinars every Thursday now, right, Danielle? I mean, it's pretty much been every Thursday.
Yeah,
right?
we have been. And I would take that contract and I would have each one of your staff members present it to you. Just ask them, say, how are you going to present to a patient, and find their comfort level. Tweak them.
I had in the businesses where I've done this, that's exactly, Danielle, what we've done. We've done mock-up things, and I've spoken to all of the staff by phones in different businesses. They could ask me questions about presentation. I spoke to the owner. So you're absolutely right. It's something that you basically train.
Michael, there is one more legal question. That is, what kind of an attorney should a person hire to customize the contract?
I would say an employment lawyer, a business lawyer certainly, and probably every one of, I'm sure your viewers, Lee, has their own personal lawyer, or should, in the sense of a family lawyer. You want somebody like that, but when I say that, it should be your business lawyer. Okay, this has permutations of First Amendment law. It's grounded in First Amendment law, but the tweaking of it has to do more with the business aspects of that. And of course, as I've said, this is, as you've said, this is not seeking any clientele. But if I offered this at the beginning, if your business lawyer wants to call me up and say, "Hey, I've got this contract. What did you mean when you said to individualize it?" I'm glad to help. And so that's not really an issue for me.
That's terrific. Got some nice compliments as well. So,
Oh, sure. Thank you.
so thank you for the compliments. That makes a big difference to our guests. Makes a big difference to us, and we're really happy that you're happy. So
That's great. Thank you very much, everybody.
Michael, fantastic job. Danielle, always fantastic job.
Thank you. Thank you.
We'll see you again next Thursday. We don't know what we're doing yet, but we hope it's going to be cutting edge, and we're going to try to make it that way. Thanks for joining us.
Thank you.
Good night.
Bye-bye.